Your motorcycle keys sit beside a phone you still do not want to answer. The road promises clarity, control, and the version of you that feels hardest to disturb. Yet genuine relief can still become a way not to face what waits at home. That is the first distinction. The motorcycle itself does not prove emotional avoidance. Riding becomes avoidance when the relief repeatedly replaces emotional contact, communication, or necessary action instead of helping you return to them. The relief can be real. On a motorcycle, attention narrows. Your hands, mirrors, road surface, body position, and the movement ahead demand presence. The noise in your head may lose volume because the environment gives your attention somewhere immediate to go. That matters because calling riding therapeutic is not automatically foolish or dishonest. A ride can offer pleasure, competence, solitude, connection, and a break from mental pressure. It can remind you that you can still make decisions, control a machine, and move through the world under your own direction. Sometimes the ride was simply a good ride. But a motorcycle can also become more than an activity. It can become part of your self-concept. It may represent freedom, discipline, skill, independence, or belonging. Questioning the role of riding can then feel less like examining a coping habit and more like challenging who you are. That is why this subject needs precision. Riders are not one psychological type. Enjoying speed, machinery, solitude, group rides, or difficult skills does not prove insecurity, trauma, recklessness, or avoidance. High mileage does not reveal motive. Neither does low mileage. Emotional avoidance is about function. It means trying to escape, suppress, or control an unwanted inner experience in a way that begins creating wider costs. The object used for that escape can be almost anything. What matters is the job the behavior is performing in that moment. Two riders can take almost identical journeys for very different reasons. One may be enjoying a planned afternoon, returning refreshed and ready for ordinary life. Another may reach for the keys the instant a painful conversation, decision, memory, or feeling becomes difficult to tolerate. A single rider can use one motorcycle differently on different days. The pattern becomes difficult to see because avoidance does not always feel like fear. It may feel like competence while looking disciplined, private, and self-reliant. You do not fall apart. You put on the helmet, start the engine, and regain control. Then the distress drops. That immediate relief teaches a powerful lesson. When emotional pressure rises, riding works. It changes your focus before the original problem changes. Because the relief is genuine, repeating the response can seem completely rational. The behavior may be helping in the short term while quietly postponing the part that requires emotional contact. This is the first uncomfortable turn. The ride does not need to fail in order to become avoidance. Its success at reducing distress may be exactly what keeps the pattern hidden. The first crack usually appears after the engine stops. You return calmer, but the message remains unanswered. The decision is still waiting. The person who needed honesty receives more silence. The feeling may be quieter, yet nothing about your relationship with that feeling has changed. Temporary distance is not automatically unhealthy. Stepping away can prevent an overwhelmed reaction and give you room to think. The difference appears when distance repeatedly ends in disengagement. If every reset returns you to the same avoidance, the ride is regulating emotion without expanding your ability to meet its source. Research on disengagement does not justify declaring that one postponed conversation damages your emotional health. The effects are more modest and complicated than that. Still, regular disengagement has been associated with stronger negative reactions to later stress. Relief now can coexist with less flexibility later. Emotional processing moves in another direction. It does not require dramatic confession or endless analysis. It requires enough contact with the feeling to notice what it is connected to, and enough willingness to choose a useful response while discomfort is still present. This is where many easy judgments fail. Frequency is the wrong test. A person can ride every day and still communicate, reflect, make decisions, and remain emotionally available. Another person can ride only occasionally, yet use that one ride to escape a moment that cannot be postponed without consequence. The calendar does not reveal the function. The surrounding pattern does. So the darker interpretation should never come from one ride. It needs a cluster. The first marker is trigger-linked riding. The urge to ride becomes almost automatic after particular emotional experiences. Conflict, shame, grief, pressure, uncertainty, or feeling exposed does not lead first to reflection. It leads to the ignition. There may be ordinary explanations. You could simply know that a familiar activity settles you. That alone is not evidence of avoidance. The second marker is repeated postponement. After the ride, the important conversation, decision, acknowledgement, or request remains untouched. Not once, but often enough that the ride becomes part of the delay. Again, there can be fair alternatives. Perhaps the issue genuinely needed time. Perhaps speaking immediately would have made things worse. The question is whether time creates engagement or merely creates another reason to wait. The third marker is emotional dependence on access. When weather, injury, work, family responsibilities, or another limit prevents riding, the frustration feels larger than missing an enjoyable hobby. It feels as if your only reliable way to become emotionally manageable has been taken away. None of these markers proves a diagnosis. Together, however, they make one possibility harder to dismiss. The motorcycle may no longer be only a source of freedom. It may also be controlling how much contact you have with parts of your own experience. That creates a contradiction. You may describe riding as the place where nobody controls you, while your emotional stability becomes increasingly dependent on being able to ride. The activity associated with flexibility starts organizing the rest of your life around one acceptable route to relief. The clearest dividing line appears after the engine stops. Judge the ride by what you become more willing and able to face afterward. If the ride helps you return, name the problem, reopen communication, tolerate uncertainty, or take one proportionate step, then the relief has expanded your capacity for action. If calm repeatedly becomes another reason not to act, the ride may be replacing emotional engagement rather than supporting it. That distinction changes the title question. Riding as therapy does not become emotional avoidance at a certain mileage, speed, duration, or level of enthusiasm. It becomes avoidance when short-term relief repeatedly takes the place of contact with what matters. The consequence reaches beyond the original feeling. When one activity becomes your only dependable regulation method, anything that blocks it can feel like a threat. Bad weather becomes more than disappointing. A responsibility feels worse than inconvenient. A person asking you to stay may begin to feel like the obstacle between you and emotional control. Someone else may experience every reset ride differently. You leave to regain clarity. They remain beside the unresolved subject, unsure whether you are preparing to return or finding another way not to. The motorcycle is not the villain, nor should you abandon an activity that gives you focus, pleasure, identity, or community. It means a symbol of freedom should not become the only place where difficult emotions are allowed to lose their power. The alternative is not forcing yourself to stay overwhelmed. Acceptance does not mean enjoying pain, agreeing with every thought, or refusing a healthy break. It means allowing enough discomfort to remain that you can still choose what matters next. Keep the ride, but change its job. When you return, identify what triggered the need to leave. Name the emotion as accurately as you can without demanding that it disappear. Then notice the action you have postponed. It might be a conversation, a decision, an apology, a boundary, or simply acknowledging what happened. Choose one proportionate step. This is not a dramatic transformation or a promise that the feeling will never return. One action that proves the relief has reconnected you with life rather than removed you from it. This creates another kind of independence. You are no longer asking the motorcycle to carry every emotion that feels difficult to hold elsewhere. You are building more than one route back to stability, which protects both your emotional flexibility and the meaning riding already has for you. Now the keys and the face-down phone mean something different. Reaching for them is not evidence that you are escaping. The phone is not proof that you must answer before you are ready. The real evidence appears in what happens next. Do you use the calm to return, or take the next ride to keep disappearing? A healthy ride can give you distance, pleasure, focus, and room to breathe. Then it brings you back with greater willingness to meet what remained behind. The road can still be therapy. It becomes avoidance when it never leads you home.